All right, welcome to Think React Lead. We are back and we got everything figured out. We are using the old cell phone right now. So I am going to invite my man, Chris Wise, and he'll be coming on here. Send the invite to him. He'll be coming on here soon. And his story is just amazing. It's incredible. And I'm bringing him on because he's going to provide a different insight to something that I cannot. Where are you, Chris? Guest requests. Oh, there you are. Add. Boom. Yes. And he should be coming on 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There is the man of the hour, Mr. Chris Wise himself. Let's get you off my other cell phone. We are good to go. How are you doing, man?
Doing awesome.
Good.
Good to see you, Dom.
Likewise. Well, in the interest of time, I know you are a busy man, so I want to say thank you for coming on. It's a pleasure meeting you in Irvine at that event we were at, and we spoke in passing. Is kind of how that went down, and here we are.
Yep.
You know, I just want to talk about. I'm gonna let you take it from here, and I'll interject every now and then. Who are you? What do you do? And get to the point. Like, everybody wants to know about the 19 months in prison, but who is Chris Wise, man?
Yeah, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, and I started my first business at the age of 12. I've always been this very driven, masculine man, just out to create the life of my dreams. And around the age of 35, back in 2013, when all this happened, I had created this amazing life. I was running 3 different companies virtually. I had a beautiful Colombian girlfriend. I had my life down to 2 suitcases. I had, I had all this massive freedom, just traveling around the world, living in different countries for 3 to 6 months at a time. And so we had this 6-month world tour planned out. And so we were living in Puerto Vallarta at the time, because my girlfriend and I, neither one of us had ever lived on the beach.
Nice.
And so, and then we're going to be in Los Angeles for a week. And then we're going to go hiking in the Pacific Northwest. So we're going to go to Vegas for a month. And we had this incredible, just all planned. It was awesome.
Lifestyle.
And it was just awesome. And so we're flying in from Puerto Vallarta into LAX. And the plane lands and is taxiing on the tarmac in Los Angeles. And all of a sudden, the plane stops. We're not at the gate. It just stops. And over the loudspeaker, I hear, "Welcome to Los Angeles. This is your captain speaking. We're going to be stopped here momentarily on the tarmac. Customs needs to come on board." And I'm on my phone. I'm back in the U.S. I haven't been back in the U.S. for like 5 months. And I'm like, I'm so excited to be back in the U.S. Tonight, I'm going to my favorite restaurant, the Melting Pot.
Right.
And little did I know that this was going to be my last Facebook post for 19 months.
Wow.
I look up and I see this big black guy walking down the aisle, and I'm like, well, I'll just keep texting, Facebook, and he stops by my chair and he goes, "Christopher Wise?" And I look up and I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "You're under arrest." And I'm like, and we're in the back of the plane. He stands me up,
right,
handcuffs me, and walks me off the plane. Now, as I'm being walked off the plane, everybody's looking at me like I'm a terrorist. And I'm just like, in my mind, I'm like, what is going on? Like, I can't even imagine what I would have done. And I even think that maybe they have the wrong Christopher Wise. So I'm like, okay, are you sure you guys have the right Christopher Wise? And they're like, yeah. The next thing I know, they're handing me off to the Secret Service. Now I'm like, what the fuck is going on? The Secret Service, that's who handles security for the president. Like, right. What do they think I did? I'm like, I swear I support Obamacare. Like, what is happening?
Zero clue.
So finally, and I'm asking them, what am I being charged with? Finally, they tell me. And well, actually, they reference 2 names at first. And I recognize these 2 names to be 2 people who 4 years before, in 2009, because it's August of 2013, in 2009, I had hired to help me get a loan for my business.
Okay.
And As I was going through the loan process, I realized that they were doing a couple of shady things.
Fair enough.
Now, I had spent 6 months doing due diligence on these guys, making sure that what they were doing was legit. But what I didn't know was that, so I continue to move forward in the loan process, even though I knew they were doing some shady things.
Okay.
What I didn't know, that's where I was at fault. That's where I violated the laws, because there's conspiracy laws that say
Right.
if you benefit from a crime, then you're guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I would have known this, I would have never gotten involved. But from my perspective, it's another company. I'm going to use the money for legal purposes. I'm going to pay the money back. And so I moved forward with it, and so that was my fault.
Okay.
I wasn't able to get bail because I had been traveling internationally for the past year. I didn't have any ties in Los Angeles. It was going to be very expensive for me to fight this case, like, 50 to 100 grand, and I didn't have that readily available.
Okay.
So I had to go with a public defender.
Ooh.
And if you know anything about the system, like, they're set up to crank out plea deals.
Right. That's it. Both my brothers are criminal defense attorneys. They're just like, never take the public defender. It's lose-lose. And
me finding myself in this situation, I saw that my easiest way out was to cut a plea deal.
Right.
Because, like, going to trial with a public defender, suicide, like, I would have, who knows how many years I would have gotten.
Right.
But what's made my story so unique, and why I've been sharing it in so many different places, is how I actually chose to go through prison. Now, prison is a hyper masculine environment. The threat of violence is always present.
Hourly or daily? Just so that our viewers know. Or is it
like
minute by minute?
It's just you look at somebody wrong, you could be in a fight. You sit in the wrong chair, you could be in a fight.
Okay.
In prison, it's like act first, then talk about it maybe.
Okay.
It's not normal. It's not a normal world.
Got it.
And so, like, so then there's prison politics, and there's all these different weird rules. Like, if somebody from my race is getting in a fight with, let's say, somebody from your race, the blacks, like, I have to fight and back up my race. And if I don't, then I'm going to get beat up by my own race.
Okay.
And if I do, no matter who started it, and we all get caught, everybody's going to the hole, or the SHU, the special housing unit. That sucks. You're locked down 24 hours a day. Like, it's just not a fun place to be. And so I was like, none of this makes sense to me, because the way I saw it is, I'm a human being, you're a human being, we're both going through a difficult time, and I'm going to treat you with kindness and respect.
Makes sense.
And so I consciously chose not to buy into the prison paradigm, into the prison politics.
Okay. Explain that.
And what I chose instead was I chose to go through prison in the most kind and loving way.
Okay.
And that began with being kind and loving towards myself. Because what I mean by that, the prison politics, is there's this way of operating in prison like a prisoner, which in my opinion took away even more freedom of self-expression, even more freedom of just being a human being and being able to relate with whoever and helping them out and talking with them, but without all these rules of like, oh, well, I'm white and you're black, and because of that, we can't do business together, or we can't play cards together, or we can't whatever. Like, I'm just like, that's stupid. It didn't even make sense to me. And I didn't even want to get involved into that level of mentality. And so I said, I'm going to do prison my way. I'm going to do prison a human way and go through it in the most kind and loving way.
And how did you go about doing that? Because everybody doesn't, you don't just stand up and say, hey guys, I'm Chris Wise. This is what we're going to do. Like, everybody's not on board for that. So how do you do that?
Yeah. So what enabled me to actually have this and do this was, prior to prison, I had learned, it was from a very deep level of security and strength inside of myself. Now, I'd been an entrepreneur my whole life. I'd always been a leader. And so there was that level of confidence that I had about me.
Right.
But there was also a depth of love and internal security that I had cultivated within myself.
Okay.
And there was a practice that I had learned from my spiritual mentor about 2 years before all this happened. And it was basically a practice where, to my own inner child or my own inner self, I would say the words, "I love you."
Okay.
And you're not familiar with the term inner child. If you were to imagine you holding yourself as a little baby and saying the words to yourself as a little baby, that's one way to help visualize and connect with this aspect of self. And so I had been actively loving this part of myself and done a lot of work in the past. And so I was already in this practice of saying the words, "I love you." So basically, here's what it looks like. To my own inner child, I say, "I love you. I love you. I love you." And that was very powerful and transformational. But now here I'm in prison and I have all this time on my hands. And so 2 to 4 hours a day, I'm meditating and doing this "I love you" practice. Now, one day I'm in the lunchroom and I'm playing cards with this older man, and his name was Joe. And Joe's a little emotionally, let's just say he's a little emotionally unstable.
Right.
And I'm beating him at cards, and every time I'm beating him, he's getting more and more frustrated. But what happened, I never saw coming. All of a sudden, he slams his hands down on the table, he stands up, and he's like, "Come on, let's fight!" And I'm just like, in my mind, I'm just like, is this really happening? Like, this guy wants to fight me because I'm over cards. But no, he was for real. Now, a few weeks before in my cell, I was meditating and doing this "I love you" practice. And the thought came to me like, well, I've chosen to go through prison in a kind and loving way. I had also chosen to go through prison in a non-violent way.
Right.
And that decision wasn't from a place of weakness, because I've actually had a lot of Krav Maga and martial arts training. Like, I know how to hurt somebody. I know to defend myself.
Right.
And so the thought came, well, what would I do if somebody was trying to fight me? And then this idea popped into my head. And it was like, I wonder what would happen if I replied with, "I love you," to somebody who was trying to fight me.
Right.
So I just became fascinated by this idea. Like, this was like my experiment world. And I started visualizing this, like somebody in front of me trying to fight me and replying with "I love you." And now here I am in the lunchroom.
Implementation.
And Joe's fist ready to go, like, "Let's fight. Come on, let's fight." And so I stand up, I look him in the eyes, and I say, "I love you. I love you." And not like a weak or a soft "I love you,"
right,
but an "I love you" with teeth.
Right, gruff.
And all of a sudden, his whole facial composure changes. He looks lost and confused like a deer in headlights.
Right.
And he turns and walks away.
He just got awkward.
It was the most incredible thing I'd ever seen.
That's awesome.
And ever after that moment, he just avoided me. It was like he was afraid of me. He's like, "I don't want to get punched by love anymore."
Right. And let me ask you this: so that instance happened, and I'm sure there are several instances that took place, and I'm pushing the conversation forward just because I know you have something to do in a short period of time. What was it that you were immediately able to implement once you were leaving prison or even got out of prison? Because I 19 months to people like myself doesn't seem like a long time, but in prison, I can imagine it seems like it's forever.
It was forever. I mean, there's been so many insights and incredible experiences that I had. while I was in prison, and coming out of prison. But I will say, uh, one of the most, I'll share with you this experience I had where actually, um, I actually got beat up by a white supremacist,
Okay.
and where it didn't turn out as well. Well, obviously, it didn't turn out as well for my physical body in that case. So, uh, I had about 6 months to go, and onto our unit comes this white supremacist, and his name was Doc. And he was all about let me empower the whites and was talking about all this like rhetoric, this bullshit.
Right.
And everybody looked up to him. All the whites looked up to him because he had been in prison for 12 years. He's 6'2", 250 pounds, all tatted up, part of the
Jacked.
Aryan Brotherhood. Yeah, and like a real mean motherfucker, but also like really intelligent as well.
Okay.
And I never bought into his rhetoric. I never like got under his influence because I just like I want to stay away, like, stay away from him. I was always nice and try to be on his good side.
Right.
But he hated me. He hated me because he saw that I made the whites weaker because I didn't buy into all the way that he was trying to run the whites because I would just go around and be cool with everybody. I'm like, oh, let me sit over with the blacks today, or let me sit over with the Pisces today, or let me
Right.
sit over with the Asians today. Like, fuck, I don't care about race. Like, I like everybody. Let me
Right.
be cool and be cool with whoever I'm cool with. And like that to him was a disruption to the way things should be.
I can see that.
So he hated me. And so one day I'm sitting in my cell meditating, and he barges into my cell, slams the door open, comes straight across and slaps me as hard as he can across the face.
That'll wake you up.
I get down into a meditative type of pose and I put my hands up and I say, I don't want to fight. And he goes, get up. And I say, no. The next thing I know, he's jumping down on top of me, his hands around my throat, and he's choking me out. My head's up against the wall. I'm laying on this concrete floor.
Right.
And I black out momentarily. Now, when I come to, he had backed away, but now he's trying to come back down to punch me. But I knew how to defend myself, and I put up my guard, and I'm, protecting myself, and he can't get into my guard. And so he backs away out of frustration. And, this whole time, I had been loving myself in this process.
Mm-hmm.
Inside, I'm like, I love you, I love you, I love you. And now my intuition, as he's backing away, says, say it loud enough. Say it, and say it to him, and say it so that he can hear you. And I say, I love you. And he gets so angry, he picks up this plastic wrap pastry treat that was on my bed and throws it at me. And it hits me right in the nut, so it actually hurt.
Right. It doesn't take much.
And he goes, this isn't any fucking Buddhist meditation retreat. And I look him in the eyes and I say, it is for me.
Wow.
And this was my defining moment in prison. It was scary as hell. I didn't know how it was going to end.
Right.
But I responded to violence with love.
Wow. So during that moment, was there a point where you were just like, this is it, I'm going to die in prison?
It wasn't even, I didn't even have time to think that.
Okay.
Later I realized, like, there was actually some very powerful insights. Later I was meditating, and I actually after I'm meditating, after all this happened, and I have a direct, oh, by the way, I get kicked out of the whites, so I'm no longer white. Right. I'm independent. And so I have this direct experience with God. And I'm sitting and I'm sitting and I see clouds billowing up. I see light shooting up through the
Right.
clouds. And there's a download that I got in this experience. And part of that download was that I will follow my heart no matter what, even in the face of death. Nice.
Wow. So that's, that most people, and somebody commented in here, don't have the self-awareness to even think that way. in an environment like that? What was it? Well, you said you had a mentor or coach or somebody 2 years prior to coming in. Was that on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being that was the 100% most impactful thing that you did, and that's what helps you out in prison? What was it that helps you go through this prior to getting to prison? Was it the person
Yeah.
that was mentoring you?
There was so much. I mean, it's like I
Okay.
feel like I was from on a spiritual level, I was destined to go through this because of what it did for me. Like I
Mm.
feel like I went through this so this story could be shared.
Okay.
Uh,
I can
and
relate with that.
because of how transformational it was for my own spiritual journey and the deconstruction that occurred in my own ego structure
Hmm.
around this. And I'll address that because that's important, I think, to this internal prison of control that happened. But it was like I had all the right tools for this
Okay.
to happen, and it was just, I mean, I had been doing personal development since 18, personal development stuff, and then
Okay.
I went on a spiritual journey in my mid 20s. So there was no one particular thing,
Got you.
but I would say the most powerful practice that I have ever learned
Hmm.
in regards to all the different experiences that I've had and seminars and workshops and books I've read is this I love you practice.
Got it.
And the internal transformation and the safety, right? So doing this I love you practice enabled me to feel safe in my own body in
Hmm.
one of the most unsafe and violent environments I had ever been in.
Right.
And what that enabled was because let me take a step back. So prior to all this happening, I've been this masculine, driven, making shit happen kind of life, blowing things up in a good way.
Right.
And I'm like, I see control. Like the answer for me to get the type of life I want is control. Like I got to control everything. Got to control my external circumstances and relationships and business plans and all this stuff to, so I can have the life that I want.
Okay.
But it was also an internal prison of control that got constructed because I was doing all this personal development stuff, and it taught me that it's not good. If I think negative thoughts, that's not good. That's not helpful. It's going to get me off track. I just
I
need
would
to
agree.
think positive thoughts. So I got to control my thinking. And then I learned, oh, I need to control my emotional states as well, because if I'm not in a powerful emotional state, I need to state change so that I can shift into a powerful state. So I got to control my emotional states too. So now I got to control my thinking and my emotions so that I could be in constant powerful action to create the type of life of my dreams.
Hmm.
And I had done this. Like I had an awesome life, traveling the world, beautiful girlfriend, 3 companies, just it was awesome. But what I wasn't, while I had massive amounts of freedom,
Right.
what I wasn't free from was this internal prison of control that I have to constantly be monitoring my thoughts and my emotions. And that is what I got free from in prison. And how I became free from that is this. See, the downside, and while all that stuff is great, it is great to have good thoughts and it is
Of
great to be in
course.
emotional states. But the downside of that is then there was an avoidance for me of
Hmm.
feeling negative emotions.
Okay.
Or when I had negative thoughts, I would judge them and try to push them away. And constantly then there was like this new level of stress or oversight of my own mind that on some level could be considered like a lot of work.
Of course.
And so part on the emotional side, there was like when I would feel sadness or loneliness or these difficult emotions, I would state change out of it, or I would try to avoid it, or I would fill it with alcohol or sex, or like
Right.
there would be things that I could do that would or emotional eating that I would do to avoid feeling negative emotions, or so I would either avoid them, escape them, or state change out of them.
Right.
And so when I'm in prison, like there's none of that. That stuff's not available, or it is, but just not in ways I was interested in doing.
Right. No vices.
And and so I just went inside and I went deep and I said, this experience is happening for me to become so that I can become free from this. And so as I began to do this I love you practice, and as I began to so deeply love me and just sit for hours and meditate for hours, this I love you practice began to enable me to feel safe in my own body. And as I began to feel safe in my own body, I began to feel safe enough to feel all of these emotions that were coming up as my life is falling apart on the outside.
Right.
Because sadness, loneliness, loss, like all these emotions are coming up. And now, at first I wasn't able to fully feel them all. But now as I'm going through this and surrendering so deeply, because my intuition told me, surrender, completely let go into this. Just
So hard for
completely
people to do.
surrender. Yeah,
Let
especially
go.
prison.
Yes.
Completely surrender and relax into this process. And so I did. But what enabled me to surrender, let go, and begin to feel all of these emotions that were coming up from my circumstances was this I love you practice. In essence, this I love you practice was the key that unlocked me, that freed me and unlocked the prison cell from this internal prison of control that I had created. And so as I am continuing to more deeply love myself, I'm now beginning to able to fully feel all of these emotions. And I realize that I have a lifetime of unfelt emotion.
Don't we all?
Because in the past, when I would feel these negative emotions, I would escape or avoid them. Well, they
Right.
didn't go away. I've been carrying them in my own body.
Oh, yeah.
And so now I have this gift, this opportunity of uninterrupted time, free from the distractions of the normal world, to feel through and love myself through a lifetime of unfelt emotion.
You know what's crazy, and I didn't really know your story prior to this conversation, but I just find it ironic how being imprisoned and I would say almost being killed in prison brought you to this place where my experience was being a police officer and almost killing as a police officer brought me to the same place where you're at now. So I just find how two completely different worlds, yet the same experiences taking place. So now that you're out of prison, what are you doing now? What are you doing today?
Yeah. So to make the bridge, so coming out of prison, I had so deeply surrendered into life and really stepped into more of a feminine energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I come out of prison and I'm like, okay, universe, I've surrendered. Now bring me everything that I've desired.
Right.
And guess what happened?
It doesn't work that way.
Nothing.
Exactly.
And I was like, that's why there's so many broke spiritual people, because they just wait to receive. And
Right.
it's like, no, there's still action. And I was like, after 9 months of me, I had never lived life that way. I was like, let me give it a try. No, it doesn't. You can stay broke that way. And so I was like, all right, I need to bring back masculine action like I know how to do.
Right.
But I brought it back from because in the past I was so hard on myself and I beat myself up. And so I'm going to bring back action and masculine purpose in the most kind and loving way to myself.
Okay.
So over the 2 years, 2016 and 2017, was really actually 15 and 16, 17 was really about a very deep integration of both these masculine and feminine energies. And so now I experience life as there's such this depth of surrender that I have. But out of that depth of surrender arises my masculine purpose and my ability to really just take on the world and create the life of my dreams.
Feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's phenomenal.
And so now what I'm working on is, so there's the work that I'd say the core of everything that I'm doing starts with LQ, and that's your love quotient.
Okay.
And that's so the website where all that work is, it's thelovequotient.org. And this is a core body of knowledge about so LQ is your ability to be kind and loving towards yourself and others. And so I'm taking this like science research-based back stuff about how love directly impacts life and the world and intelligence and your emotional, your EQ and your IQ and all these things.
Everything.
And part of this is being brought into the work that I'm doing with businesses
Mm-hmm.
and with Wise Profits. And so I work with companies that are typically under 5 million in revenue, and I help them scale and grow beyond 10 million,
Okay.
but starting from a place of self-care and self-love. Like, how can you create the most amazing company that's making an impact in the world, but like treat yourself in a healthy way
Mm-hmm.
along the way? The other way that this is showing up is in the work that we're doing in schools. And
Okay.
so we're currently creating a program. It's currently called the Wise Love Program, but where we're taking this I Love You practice and building it into a curriculum for these initial charter schools.
Okay.
And my 25-year vision, my 25-year moonshot is that every child in every school in the world has learned how to love themselves.
I love it, man. And I typically don't do this, but I resonate with your story just because it's almost like we come from two opposite ends of the spectrum and just collide like two rams. And this is really my first in-depth conversation with you, but it's just one of those things when you know, right?
Yeah.
I want you, if you don't mind afterwards, I know we talked, you have a link of some sort for somebody, for the audience to do something. You can tell it now, but then afterwards, can you post it in the comments?
Yeah. So this I Love You practice is the most powerful thing like I have ever discovered. And so I will share that with you guys. It's chriswise.com/love. And I'm actually typing it right here into the comments. And when you go there, you can just put in your name and your email, and I'll email you this video where it's an 8-minute video where I actually explain the I Love You practice, how to do it, who's saying it to who, why you're saying I love you. You're not saying I love me or myself. I explain all what it is. Like, I'm telling you, like, here's what most people miss about this I love you thing. It's like, oh, it's too simple. Like, that doesn't even, like, I'm telling you, like, I've 20 years of doing personal development,
Right.
28 years in personal development, approaching 18 years or 15 years on a spiritual journey. This is the most powerful practice I have ever learned. And if most people have heard of meditation, and I think most people are like, yeah, I've heard of meditation. There's good, whether you do it or not.
Right.
But for some people, meditation is hard.
It is,
because you're just sitting there and you're okay. Well, this is how I Love You empowers meditation. So you're sitting there and you get distracting thoughts, or you're wanting to pick up your phone, or like you're having a hard time just sitting and being.
Mm-hmm.
So the I Love You practice will help you feel more calm and safe in your body because you're infusing your body with love.
Got it.
And so that actually helps you feel more calm. When you actually go to meditate, you'll actually find like, oh, meditation was a little easier today.
You enjoy spending time with yourself.
Yeah. And because one of the reasons why meditation is so hard is because stepping into the emptiness of being,
Mm-hmm.
which is what meditation moves you towards, is just silence and emptiness. That can be fucking scary for a man. For anybody.
There's no distractions. Your past creeps up in your head. All of the things that you don't want anybody to know about you creeps up in your head. Like, if you sit there long enough quiet. Now, my meditation came from deployments, and when you're K9, you get deployed with the dog. It's just you and the dog, and you're literally in the middle of nowhere. Dog sleeps, and you just have nothing but, there's no radio because it's all in some language you don't understand. So it's weird. Like, it's almost scary. I'd rather get shot at the time. I'd rather get shot at than have silence to myself.
Yeah. And so this I Love You practice will help make all of that easier to step into.
I love it, man. Well, hey, you know what? Your time is valuable. As my dad says, time is money. And your time is extremely important to me. I know you got a roll. Are there any last words you want to share with the audience outside of everything that you just shared, which is amazing? I appreciate that.
Yeah, I love you guys for showing up and paying attention, and I appreciate all of you. And I would just say, if there's one thing one, I hope this story inspires you to tell your story, because I know everybody out there, you have a story. It
Yes.
needs to be heard. You having the courage to share your story makes a difference in other people's lives, plus brings
Yes.
you your own freedom and satisfaction. And what will enable you to feel safe and secure in stepping out and sharing your story. And what I think is just like the most important thing that you could do is just taking time to love you. So
I love it.
that's the message I'll leave you with.
Awesome. Well, Chris Wise, thank you very much for shedding some light on you and us as a whole. Once again, I thank you very, very much for your time. And I'm sure we will talk again, my friend.
Sounds good. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Have a good one. Ciao. All right. Well, you guys heard it. Chris Wise story. That was so awesome. Just kind of thank him for coming on. And again, I'm Dom Faussette with Think React Lead. All of you have a wonderful day. And in the words of Chris Wise, actually, I can own it. I love you as well. Ciao for now.